For June, my journal is yet again undergoing some changes as I just work through my system, trying to simplify it, remove redundancy, and make it work as well for me as it possibly can. Before we get into setting up and talking about what that's going to look like, let's just have a look at how this month was going. Moving from April into May in my journal, I was feeling really demotivated. I wasn't getting into the layouts. There was a lot of sections that were going not filled in or just not touched, especially at the start of the month with the start of month setup. For the sake of remembering what that looked like, flipping back to the start of April, I had a bunch of sections on my dashboard that I wasn't using. I kind of, but didn't really use my monthly log. I found that the work outputs layout was kind of good when I first set it up, but I wasn't actually getting it and using it throughout the month. So although the sections got populated, they didn't really get used. And when it came to my projects and goals layouts, because all of the information on this layout was effectively a rehash of what I've got in another space, it didn't really seem necessary to have it. Taking those ideas, when it came to setting up for May, I just decided to strip back to effectively 2 monthly spreads. So we had this dashboard layout that only had a couple of sections on it rather than a lot, and a mind unwind space. The majority of the stuff that I added to this mind unwind actually got added before the month started, just as a way to clear my head, get it out onto paper, so that I could come into the month feeling cool, calm, and collected. In terms of the dashboard, stripping it back to just a couple of sections very much aligned with the need that I had to remove redundancy, make my system simpler, make it so that I could get in and use it, and not have a whole bunch of blank sections come the end of the month, with one exception. The work outputs not really working. Mainly because, I swear, the day after I wrote these things in, everything changed. This is also one part that does have duplication of information, because this stuff is all captured in Notion already. The nice part about Notion though is that if I make changes to things, I can just go and delete something, retype it out, nothing is messy, we don't have any artifacts of the things that came before. If I want to update this, I have to cross it out, or put a sticker over it, or white out, or something like that. And I just don't like the admin of having to do that, and I typically don't like the way it looks after the fact. For that reason, I'm not going to be making any changes to these lists, even though some of these things either aren't happening, or they've just been moved, or whatever else. I'm just going to leave them here to remind myself of the reason that I moved this stuff out of this journal. I do typically keep things related to work in my notebook because that's a lot of what I have to do, but that mainly comes into the daily log section. So if we flip forward, all of the stuff that I actually have to do for those content pieces gets summarized in here. Thinking more towards the decoration, I have really loved this kind of scrapbooky style. It was a fun type of creativity to get back to, bringing together multiple elements and just kind of layering them together to make this botanical notebook style. And while I don't want to go with the exact same theme for the month ahead, notably if you saw the thumbnail you probably know that, I do still want to have a theme that brings multiple elements together and has layering like this. Another thing I've also enjoyed is that I went and scaffolded out all of the weekly sections at the start of the month, mainly because I knew that I wasn't going to want to come and do this style of decoration every single week. It would make a lot more sense to just do it all at once, have a kind of pre-decorated journal that I could just come in and write down my lists on. Another thing that's been kind of nice is using my actual handwriting, or what is kind of one of the versions of my actual handwriting in my journal, because prior to this month I pretty much only used all capitals, which isn't actually my regular handwriting. It's just something that I picked up when I started journaling and kind of kept with it for however many years. As of current, I'm actually only in week 2. I'm filming this one just a little bit early because I'm going away and I need to get it edited and up on the channel and all of that kind of thing. But because I have the pre-scaffolding out, I'll have daily logs here, and then I have the next weekly section, because I'm going to be away this week, I don't need as much space, so then I have the next weekly section. I've already got all of these spaces in there, so I know I'm going to be starting for June on this spread here. In terms of the decoration for this setup, I recently did a big declutter of my washi and PET tapes, getting rid of almost 180 rolls, and some of the ones that did end up in the declutter pile, I ended up fishing out just so that I could use for this setup. I have had these for such a long time. I have used them in my reading journal, but I wanted to get one more use out of them before I gave them away to somebody else. All of those decluttered tapes I ended up taking with me to go wild, so hopefully I don't have to take any back with me. While I do consider decluttering to be my favorite sport, it still can be hard to let go of some things, especially when it comes to our hobbies and craft kind of areas, because a lot of those items feel like they still have a use. Like sometimes we get to the dregs of a pen and it's like, okay, I can probably let that go. I don't get a lot of joy out of using it. It can't go to anybody else because it's so close to finished. And maybe there's not enough ink in it to actually have it right consistently or something. But things like tapes, where the tape is still sticky, like the adhesive is fine, the decoration on it is still something you like, but it's been in your collection for ages and you just haven't been using it, those ones are tricky to let go. You can still see the value or the function in them, and if you have space in your collection, you kind of go, well, why not? I've got the space for it, it might as well stay. The issue that I find with this is that the tape can't effectively fulfill its destiny to go and decorate a page. I don't want tapes in my collection that every time I look at them, I essentially just feel guilty because I'm not using them, they're just sitting there going unused. So even though I really like this tape, I knew it was time to let it go. This also was quite a helpful decision though, because it spurred me into action to use said tape. So it gets its last hurrah as part of my collection by being the theme for this setup. Other tapes that I ended up letting go were because I realized they're really just not my style, so having them in my collection, again, going unused, making me feel guilty, those aren't the kind of feelings that I want to get from my supplies. Or it could be that I've used it to an extent that I want to, and I'm unlikely to use them again. But there's still enough of it that it could go ahead and make somebody else happy. That's another trick that I like to use for myself when it comes to decluttering. Even though it might be sad to let something go, knowing that it's going to go to somebody else and make them really happy makes me feel more motivated to declutter the item. It was such a good feeling going from 5 drawers full of tapes down to 3, which is still a lot of tape, but I know that when I go into my tape collection now, everything that I've kept is something I'm going to use, it's something that makes me happy, it's going to be way easier to find the things I'm looking for, and it means that I have more storage space for other supplies, like the excessive amount of stickers that I seem to be accumulating. But that is a future me problem. For this layout though, I am going in and making my monthly dashboard, and again I wanted to make this quite decorative, like quite decoration heavy compared to some previous months which had a lot of different little sections. And in terms of the sections I'm including, I wanted to make this fairly minimal as well, mainly because if there are too many sections on there, even though they can be useful, I won't necessarily fill them in, they might just be there to kind of fill in space. So if I'm just looking for a space filler, might as well make a decoration that then doesn't have any kind of further admin required from me. Like if given the option between putting down a sticker or putting in a section that summarizes holidays from around the world or something, the sticker is gonna take a lot less effort to put in, and I'll probably do just as much with the information stored from it compared to a holidays from around the world section, at least in this season of life. The sections that I decided to include though were the left-hand page being completely dedicated to a 1 line a day space, but this one's a little bit different because it's not talking about like something I'm grateful for or something that happened from the day, well not specifically, but more so something that I have done that I can be proud of. In a recent video we talked about the idea of keeping a wins log, or effectively a bank of evidence to show you have done things and thus you can continue to do things. In particular hard things. If you're the kind of person who gets to the end of a day or week and kind of look back on your time and go, what did I even do? Like, what do I have to show for this? What have I accomplished? This kind of layout can be really helpful for making us remember that, yeah, things actually did happen. I got things done. Especially when you're trying to make the most of your time and trying to be productive. Even though we end up with these checklists where things are crossed off and such, our eyes just gravitate towards the things that aren't finished, aren't completed. So I thought that having a dedicated space which is specifically there to show what I have accomplished would be really useful for keeping me motivated to keep working on what I'm working on. Whether that be goals, projects, work-related stuff, or anything else. The other 2 sections that I'm including though, on the right hand page, are a spot to write out what I'm working on, or essentially a goals and projects list. I just thought that the working on header would take up a little less space so it would fit nicer into the space that I designated to it. And also a schedule spot, this one being for a summary of the different videos that I'm going to be releasing on the channel. But instead of using them to keep track of when I've completed the video and put it out or anything like that, I'm only going to be writing in this section once I know the video is going to be released on that day, which might mean writing it in there after the fact. There were two main reasons for this. One of them is poor planning, because I just put the working on section in the corner of the page and then didn't want to fill up the rest of the space with decoration. And also because I'm not quite ready to let go of having that summary of videos in my setup. I've been doing it for so long now that I'm kind of just like feeling compelled to do it. Kind of in a similar way that I would consistently put the monthly log into my journal, even though I knew that the monthly log and I have a very strange relationship where I'd like set it up and just not really use it. While I've managed to let that one go and that one's not going to be in this setup and it wasn't in my setup for May, I'm just not quite ready to let go of having something related to my work release schedule. I have at least narrowed it down to just video content though, so that's kind of a step in the right direction, or at least I think it is. In terms of timing though, from first to final touches, this spread took about 30 minutes to set up, with that time not including any kind of pre-planning time, of which there was very limited pre-planning outside of deciding on what headers I needed, and it also didn't include umming and ahhing time about sticker placement, which definitely adds a bit, because when it comes to stickers and PET elements like the ones I'm using in this setup, there is definitely a lot of indecision and umming and ahhing. You can see though we have three main sections, so the good job me section, which is effectively kind of like a line a day, but more specifically about something I'm proud of myself for. So a little win or a big win, just something that I did during the day that I'm like, yep, I did a good job on that and I can be pleased with my progress. Over here we have the working on section. Ideally I probably would have put the header above that section, but it didn't happen that way, and that's okay. This is what happens when you go into making a layout without a solid plan, which I have been trying to avoid, but here we are. We just have a simple list with a checkbox space down the side, and then the space next to this is to write out whatever goal or project that I'm working on. I have quite a few lines. I don't think I'm gonna fill all of them up, but I wanted enough space just in case any more come up. And then rather than having a space to check off having done any piece of video content or whatnot, I'm just gonna put in this little schedule. So we've got a slot for my Monday, Thursday, and Saturday video, or at least Monday, Thursday, Saturday where I'm based. After this though, the next layout we're going to set up is another mind unwind, because I found it so very helpful this month. Being able to get my thoughts out of my head and onto paper has just been really helpful for making sure that I know what's going on, I don't forget things, and I can start the month cool, calm, and collected, which is always my goal. When it comes to doing my mind unwinds or brain dumps, typically these are fairly unstructured. It's kind of like a stream of consciousness, just done as a bullet pointed list. For that reason, I want the structure of the page to be fairly open, so just putting some decoration into the bottom left and top right corners. I know that it can be sometimes helpful to have different sections or headings for a brain dump, especially after the fact when you're trying to make sense of all the information you've noted down, but I also find that I'm not very good at predicting how much space I would need in any category, and what if I come across things that don't really fit into the categories that I've assigned for myself. For that reason, I just leave it header free outside of the page header that just says mind unwind, and I'll use this layout very similarly to how I do my daily logging, which is just writing everything down in 2 columns per page, so 4 columns across the spread, just starting in the top left corner and working my way down to the bottom right. Having a designated mind unwind or brain dump space in my monthly setup was a new addition for May, and it's one that I have previously included like quite a while ago, and it just didn't really get a lot of use, but that's because I wasn't intentional about using it before the month started. I kind of had it there to use during the month, but by that point I already had my weeklies and daily logs set up, so I just do it in that space instead. Intentionally getting in and using it before the month starts has been just a really nice way to get a little bit more mental clarity and really lean into the idea of a fresh start at the beginning of a new month. Given that this one is really just some key pieces of decoration and a simple page border, it took about 6.5 minutes to set up, but of course that time doesn't include the use time, where I'm gonna sit there and brain dump all my thoughts out. For that, I usually like to set myself a timer, give myself a time limit, and then after that initial brain dump, come back and add to it as I think of things. Last month we started filling this in together because there was just so much on my mind that I needed to get out of my journal, and it was a designated space for it. This time around though, I've only just started week 2 of my 4-week cycle, so I still have 2, well, almost 3 full weeks before I get to this month, so I'm not going to do that just yet. It feels a little premature. We're going to leave that until I'm just a tad bit closer to June. Instead, I'm going to flip over and we're going to set up the first weekly dashboard in here, or essentially the structures that I like to use for each week to keep me cool, calm, and collected. With having removed the monthly log from my monthly setup, I've been kind of tempted to go to a more structured weekly where we have a space for each day of the week. I'm not there just yet, but it is something I'm kind of toying with. But because I haven't made any formal decisions about that, and also because I'm going to be using this weekly in a fair bit of time, like at the time of setting up I was still 2.5 weeks out, I didn't want to go and predetermine a structure for myself that I might decide between now and then isn't really going to work. Instead, I figured I'd stick with what does work for me, and that's having the main sections of a meal planner, a priority space, and a small section for any migrated tasks. Now, I did just say that I was going to stick to things that work. Technically speaking, the migrated space and I haven't really been having the best time together either, but it is a practice that I can see as being really helpful for me, and I just kind of maybe I'm just wishful planning. I want to use it so bad that I keep putting it in even though I'm not really using it. I might end up making this the last time I put it in if it doesn't get used. But because I am aspirationally planning here, at least as far as the migrated section goes, I'm still going to include it. In terms of the meal plan though, this is something that I go and write in at the start of the week, noting down any of the breakfast, lunches, and dinners that I'm intending on having. And I kind of use this as a way to check off that I am eating the things I've planned, so putting a little check mark along the right hand side when I consume the meal that I had intended to. For the priority spot, this is for any goals or projects that I'm working on, and in particular any action steps that I want to take in working on them. Those action steps are the ones I'm specifically thinking I'm going to be doing that week. So rather than getting completely overwhelmed by looking at the laundry list of tasks that I have to do for each of my goals and projects, instead I just pull out the ones that are for that specific time frame and note them down on this weekly dashboard. That means I have a more targeted list to use, leading to less overwhelm and better goal progress. This one took about 12 minutes to set up, but if I decide to go and put in any kind of pre-structured sections for each of the days of that week, I'll have to add that time on as well. At this stage though, I'm not putting those in. One of the things that's holding me back from making those pre-structured sections for a kind of more traditional weekly log, I can't even really call it a traditional weekly log, it's not really aligned with the original bullet journal method, but that's besides the point. If we just call it a weekly layout, that idea of pre-sectioning in the different spaces for each of the days, my biggest issue with that is I'm typically not using the exact same amount of space for every day of the week, or I just don't really need to, because Monday, Tuesday, and sometimes Wednesday are usually quite task heavy. I have a lot to write down, and then I get to Thursday and I'm in an energy slump and I just don't need as much space. So if I'm pre-sectioning out each of those different spots, do I need to make it that the Thursday is just by default smaller? What if I get to a Thursday where I need a lot of tasks? I'm not really too sure how to approach it, and that's why I know that daily logging has worked so well for me. I just take up as much space as I need to and then put in the header for the next day once that one's done. But I just like the idea of being able to jot down things that I want to do on a Friday when it's currently a Tuesday or something like that. I'm still toying around with it. I haven't committed to anything yet, but if you have any suggestions or recommendations, I'd love to hear them. Flipping back though, so that we can have a look at everything we've set up, we have the monthly dashboard with the addition of a new section and a simplified version of my work outputs. We have the mind unwind space, which is very open, very readily available to jot down anything and everything that's on my mind, so I can get it all out of my head and onto paper. And then my first weekly log or weekly kind of dashboard where I have a space for my priorities, meals, and to migrate anything over from the previous month. It's almost daunting to think that we're almost halfway through the year, which means that after I fill up the last little bit of this journal, that means that this one is going to be back on the shelf and it's going to be time to set up a new one. To make sure that you don't miss out on that one, be sure that you're subscribed to the channel. But if you wanted to see the consideration that went into setting up this journal and the start of journal pages I included, then this video is the next one to check out. Click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.